Hey everyone, I really hope you're doing well. I want to talk a little bit about a dark subject today called learned helplessness. Yesterday I talked about feigned helplessness, in which it's a ploy. This is no ploy. This is no joke. Learned helplessness is a condition that afflicts thousands of dogs and thousands of dog owners. So let me talk to you a little bit about it today. It's a really serious subject, and I just want to spend a little bit of time on it because with me doing canine pharmacotherapy, I cannot tell you how many dogs I deal with and I come across that are definitely suffering from this phenomenon known as learned helplessness. So a little background, scientists for years have been studying this phenomenon, and in one of the studies, they did an experiment, for example. Again, so many times we study the effects of stressors on rodents because there's a lot of continuity between our brain and their brain. So if you're trying to address a fear or phobia in a human, many times a simple test you can do with a rodent like a rat, and you can get results that you can now apply to human beings. So in a little experiment called active task or active avoidance tasking, they took a box and they put a little rodent in it, and they were able to electrify either side. They divided the box in half and let the little gateway open right here in the middle, and it was able to give a mild electric shock, nothing really that caused any sort of harm to the animal, but definitely motivated the animal to do something. And right before they gave the shock, they could do one side or the other. So side one or side two, they would give a signal ahead of time, right before the little mild shock came. Well, in no time at all, rats that are fresh, we call them fresh, meaning they've not been exposed to stressors, no sort of duration or type of stressors over and over again. These rats were able to figure this thing out in no time, literally 2 to 3 repetitions, and next thing you know, the buzzer goes off and the rat calmly and readily goes to the side over here and avoids the mild electric shock. That's another example of safety signal hypothesis, which is really cool, hence why the rat would move readily but calmly to the other side, because anytime an animal can predict a threat, because the threat is signaled by a cue, then the absence of the threat signal comes to predict the absence of danger. And hence why they calm. They can just relax until the darn signal goes off, and then bingo, okay, well, I was comfortable over here, but now I'm going to move to the other side over there. No big deal. But then they noticed that there were other rats that could not learn this task. No matter how many times this thing would go off, they would stay on the side. They could not learn the task. And they just kind of shut down. They just gave up. And so come to find out, these are rats that had been subjected to frequent, uncontrollable, unpredictable stressors. And because of that, they could not learn the task, and they also didn't learn how to cope. But on the contrary, what they did learn was how to be helpless. Wow, what an incredibly painful and sad situation to be in. And to make it even worse, that when you have learned helplessness, it's generalized. So in other words, it's not just specific to a box with an electric strips in it. It's generalized. And the animal suddenly doesn't have the ability to cope with a variety of tasks, a myriad of tasks. They don't even have the ability to do that. And then it works its way into their ordinary life. And next thing you know, you have an animal a dog that can't understand training. You're trying to teach it simple training commands, but it can't learn the task. You're working on housebreaking, and no matter how much you follow the right procedures in housebreaking, the poor dog just continues to soil the home. They don't know how to compete for food, and even worse, they don't even know how to avoid social conflicts. Social aggression. It's a horrible state to be in, guys. Horrible. They don't even attempt to cope, to any sort of coping response when they're introduced to something new. They don't even attempt it. Wow. And then when they do attempt it, on the rare occasion when one of these animals attempts a coping response to a new stressor, they can't even recognize if they were successful, if what they did worked. Wow, imagine that. So when you do finally even try to respond, you try to come up with a coping mechanism, you don't even recognize when it works. They can't even tell. They can't even perceive control and mastery when it's presented to them. If you tighten the association between a coping response and a reward, a normal dog will repeat the response. The response rate will go up. It's kind of like with any training. Okay, maybe I'm a little stressed in learning how to sit. But then all of a sudden I put my butt to the ground and bingo, there's a reward. Well, your normal animal will increase the rate of sitting upon command. They pick up the two together because you've tightened that association between the stressor and the reward. But again, dogs and humans suffering from learned helplessness, they don't. They don't put together. It has no effect on learned helplessness. And it continues on because the learned helplessness paradigm produces animals that will stop grooming. So these are things I need you to pay attention to. If you own one of these dogs, listen to what I'm about to tell you. One of the outward symptoms of dogs is they'll stop grooming. So dogs that used to lick their paws and lick their bodies and scratch a little bit and try to work their own little mats out of their ears or off their back, they stop. They don't do it. They become disinterested in food. Yeah, they'll eat enough just to stay alive, but your healthy eater, your animal that was always excited about having dinner, suddenly is no longer excited about having dinner. They just disinterested in food. There'll be a disorganization of their sleep architecture, meaning they won't drop into the deeper states of sleep. They waken up frequently. They typically wake up a lot and they try to go get a drink of water. They can't ever seem to get into that deep seventh layer of sleep. Their entire sleep architecture is disrupted, disorganized. They don't ever follow the right even sleeping patterns. They sleep during the day when they would never normally sleep. And then all of a sudden they're up at nighttime. Keep an eye on things like that. They have elevated glucocorticoids. They'll have those in their system. You may not notice that, but they'll show itself in their behavior. They'll be super stressed out. And then also, one of the most disturbing things is that they will start to mutilate themselves. This is where we start having lick granulomas, chewing on parts of my body. This is what happens when you're under this constant siege of pathological stress. So if your dog has any of those signs, make sure you reach out. Make sure you do something about it. You know, they've done studies with human beings and they found that we humans are actually worse than dogs. It takes very little exposure to unpredictable and uncontrollable stressors before we start developing learned helplessness. We are actually worse than dogs. We're afflicted easier, much easier than a dog. But yet, I tell you, if I evaluate 100 dogs for a maladaptive type condition, I would say well over half are learned helplessness. Okay, so if your dog might be suffering from that, what can you do about it? Number one, if they truly are, if you can diagnose that condition, and that condition is true, it's there, you can articulate why, you come up with all the reasons, you tick off all those boxes in the symptoms, then you will have to treat this with medicine. The animal will have to be subjected to antidepressants, same thing as a human being. There is a chemical reaction in the brain. There's a chemical deficiency, neurochemicals. You've got to shore that up. You've got to shore up brain communication. You have to do it. It's a real physiological problem. And you're going to have to address it that way. But before you get there, there are many things that we can do to recognize it and also to prevent it. So case in point, let's just talk a little bit about training, obedience training. There's pros and there's cons when it comes to obedience training. One of the great pros about it is that you're literally forming safety signal hypothesis. The animal learns the boundaries in which it can operate its behaviors. It learns, it's like, again, seeing a minefield with all the mines above ground. I can negotiate through and work my way through. No big deal. I'm calm about this. And if one's about to go off, it's going to send me a little warning buzzer, and therefore I have an opportunity to get to a safe area. So obedience provides a lot of predictability and a whole bunch of control. That's awesome. However, some people are so overzealous about training, they try to teach too much to their dog, or they try to go for perfection when training it right off the bat. So again, now imagine you're this dog and you just mastered sit and you're thinking, okay, so when I hear that word sit, I put my butt to the ground, I'm going to get a treat. Yeah, that's great. Until all of a sudden, down. Wait a minute, I don't know that one. Well, you still have to do it. Down. Oh, and heel, by the way. So we're going to work on the automatic sit today, and then when we come to a stop and you do that, then I'm going to make you lie down. And then I'm going to backpedal and call you, and I'm going to do all of those things in one training session. Those are fun things to do. Once the dog interprets every signal, I can predict the signal. I know what I'm supposed to do, so the outcome is very predictable. Dogs that are well trained, they control the outcome of any signal. They know how to respond to that signal to gain a benefit or to avoid a cost. But in the beginning, they don't know that. I don't know what down means. I don't know what heel means. And I don't know what come means. And I don't know I'm supposed to stop and sit automatically when you stop. And when you try to teach all of those commands in one session or in an 8-hour period, like some people you see advertised out there as a trainer, you're going to shove your dog into learned helplessness faster than you can think. You can't do that. Dogs must always, as quickly as possible, be presented with stressors that they can predict and that they can control. Same as human beings. The 4 factors of the physiological stress response are predictive information, number 1, because that allows you the ability to control something, to control that stressor to some degree. Then there is social support, meaning I'm not in this by myself. I'm not a man on an island by myself. And then there's an outlet for frustration. All of these have to be provided, or otherwise you can slide in to learned helplessness. So make sure when you're doing training, a couple things. Don't teach too much too soon. Let your dog become a master of a few little things. Even before it becomes a jack of all trades. Let it master a few things. Remember in my survival series, the rule of 70%? That's a great rule. You don't need 100% in the beginning. 70%. Also go by the rule of 3s. Remember the rule of 3s. 3 things at the same time present themselves in close order. There is something wrong. There's something wrong, and you need to stop whatever action you're doing right at that moment and change. So all of a sudden you have a dog not grooming itself, that always grooms itself. All of a sudden a dog not eating, that is the first one to finish its food. And an animal who is walking the halls at nighttime when it normally sleeps. You need to now immediately take notice of that and take action, because you have a dog sliding into learned helplessness. And it is, of all the conditions that I have diagnosed over the last 4 decades, it is by far the worst. It breaks my heart. I hate seeing it in humans, because I've seen it in humans. I've seen it in the owners of the dogs. It's a terrible, terrible state, guys. So I hate to present all this little bad news to you today, but you need to be aware of it, because when you're aware of something like that, you can take control of it. Now you have that predictive information. I also want to talk about social support. Social support needs to be provided to these animals. And social support is not always, I love you. It is, I'll take care of you. And you prove that you can do that. You prove it. Hey, when there's a threat, I got it. Don't worry about it. I got it. Yeah, you just lay down right here. Here comes someone. I know you're afraid of dogs. I know you're afraid of people, but tell you what, I got it. You just lay down. And the fact that I can make you lie down means that out of the 2 of us, I'm more capable of dealing with that threat than you are. Animals understand that. Maybe you don't get that because you're a human, but by golly, an animal understands that, and a toddler who's more like an animal will understand that as well. So that's the kind of social support I'm talking about. You need to provide safety signal hypothesis. It is wonderful. It is wonderful because it allows the animal to relax until it's given a warning. And then when it's given a warning, it knows what the warning means, and now I can do whatever action is necessary to avoid the danger, to avoid the threat. You people out there who do all this, you want to preach around that you do all this all positive stuff. Again, I told you it does not exist. I've challenged people to debate me on that publicly, and no one will take me up on it. It doesn't exist. You can't have an animal live underneath your feet that you don't apply an occasional stressor. You don't say, no, knock it off, stop it, be quiet, you're killing me, you're going to get put up. We're humans. And the sooner you admit that that's what you do, then the better it's going to be for the dogs. It's going to be better for yourself. So quit playing that charade, because no one's buying it. I'm here to help dogs first, because they can't help themselves unless they can run away from someone like you. So don't play that game. You need to make sure that you provide safety signal hypothesis. You need to make sure that your animal has the ability to interpret any signal, be able to predict when danger is coming, and be able to control if I'm going to accept the danger or am I not. You must do that. And if you don't, shame on you. Shame on you. Okay, and then lastly, you've got to be careful, especially when you get a young dog, a young puppy, or even an adopted dog that comes into a new scenario. You've got to be careful about their environment, because animals interact with their environment and they get feedback from that environment, and that environment can cause them to slide into learned helplessness. Crates, for those of you out there, again, those of you people who think a crate is a doggy jail, again, shame on you. Yes, it can be abuse if you leave them in there 23 out of 24 hours. Everyone gets that. But again, we're hoping that dogs are owned by the reasonable and prudent person. You've just got to hope that. Got to hang your hat on that, otherwise you'll drive yourself crazy. Okay, crates provide a non-stimulating environment, which is what animals must have. They cannot handle, their senses are in such overload all the time trying to survive that they have to have moments for their brain to catalog things, to put things where they're supposed to go, like a filing system. You ever hear the saying, I think I'm going to go sleep on that, or you need to go sleep on that? There's truth to that, scientific truth to that. You must be able to have moments in your day in which you don't have someone in your face throwing a stressor your way all the time. And that crate provides that young dog that safety place, that place where I can just go do my own thing. I can relax a little bit. I can take a nap. And I can just sort everything in my brain. Anytime over the years when I've been training a dog that's had a difficult time learning, it just was hard, having a difficult time picking up that task. The first thing I made sure I always did, as soon as the training lesson was done, I put them in a crate for about an hour. And then I brought them out. And it's amazing. All of a sudden they're going, I think I got it, man. And they do. I don't put them out to play, because now they have stressors coming at them all the time. And those of you working at home, and you got kids at home because they can't go to school right now during this time, that young puppy's constantly assaulted by stressors. You think it's a grand old time. Oh, play with the puppy. Have a great time with the puppy. Oh, don't scream too loud. Don't do this. Don't do that. But the puppy is constantly subjected to you, and your dog can't handle being subjected to you 24/7. You can't even handle yourself 24/7. And why we think that if we go put our dogs up away from us, we can actually give them a little isolation, why we think that's a bad thing, I don't understand. Maybe you're suffering from learned helplessness and you don't have the ability to learn. And you don't have the ability to cope without having your dog around you nonstop. People, crates are not doggy jails. And anyone and everyone that happens to know one little thing about dog behavior, canine behavior, has spent thousands of hours and thousands of days, which I have, studying the spontaneous natural behavior of a canine, both domestic and wild. I say it emphatically with every atom of my body. When crates are used right, you are doing your dog the greatest favor that you can do. Those of you who say nay, you need to stop what you're doing, and you need to sit there and observe your animal and other animals for hours on end, for thousands of hours. And then you'll start getting a feel for the way these animals conduct themselves and what they need to have a healthy life, both physically and mentally. So guys, if you've got a new puppy, do not overexpose the puppy. We're always in such a hurry to expose it to the world. Well, that world comes with stressors when you don't know what that is. Imagine if 100 UFOs flew over our heads. What the heck was that? What we don't know, we fear. What they don't know, they fear. It's got survival value. IFF, identification, friend or foe. Foe is more important to identify than friend. You must know these things. So don't be in a hurry to super overexpose your puppy. You can expose it. There's a healthy level of exposure. And the same thing with socialization. Anytime you're in a group, especially if you're in a group that has long fangs and claws, you run the risk that you will have a super stressor come on you. Be careful about that as well. There's a time and a season for everything. And you will know if you bother to take the time to actually observe your dog, to watch it, to feel it, to know it. You'll know that. Watch your relatives right now. Watch your neighbors. Watch your friends. Because a lot of human beings are sliding into learned helplessness. They're giving up. They're just giving up. They're not even trying to cope. They can't even learn a new task. They've given up. And lastly, those of you who adopt dogs, I know you think, some of you think that you're rescuing the dog, you're doing this great thing, you're bringing it out of the shelter, you're bringing it out of this rescue. But for some of these dogs, some of them, and I do appreciate those of you that do that it's a wonderful thing. I've done it myself. But I've also realized that there's been times in my life where I just made a bad mistake. I didn't know it until I got into it. But sometimes we pluck a dog out of one situation that we perceive as bad and literally supplant it straight into hell. Now all of a sudden, I am surrounded by the principle of resemblance. I'm surrounded by other dogs who will attack me. Yeah, you may put them behind a baby gate, but they're there, and I know they're there. And because I know they're there, it keeps pathological, unpredictable, uncontrollable. I can't control this. I'm stuck here. It's like going to a zoo. It's never going to be a mirror of nature. I'm stuck here. I have no control in the situation. When you start recognizing that, guys, you have to make the difficult decision to remove one dog or another dog from the situation. These are dispersing animals naturally. They would disperse on their own. And we've got to have the heart and we've got to have the conviction to do that. You have to. No matter how painful it is, you have to. Because I'm here to tell you that learned helplessness is the darkest and saddest condition I have ever witnessed in my life. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. Sorry, I need a moment. I wouldn't wish it on a dog. And yet I'm seeing more and more of it. That's my world suddenly. And I shouldn't. So please pay attention. Look for those warning signs. I don't groom. I don't feel like eating. I'm starting to lick myself and mutilate myself. I don't avoid conflict. I don't even know how to avoid when a dog warns me that's going to attack me. I don't do anything about it and suddenly I get attacked. Look for these things. Don't overtrain. Don't overexpose. Don't over-socialize. Make sure your dog does have time to be by itself sometime during the day. And if you bring an adopted dog in your house that's constantly fearful and it's constantly being attacked, then someone's got to go. Guys, if you do those, then I guarantee you we're going to drop half of the learned helplessness situations in this world, and it's going to help you as well. Because you did something really cool. You did something really good. You sacrificed. Make that sacrifice happen, guys. Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry to bring you a dark cloud on a Thursday, but I have to. And I'll be bringing a few more of those before the 365 is over because I still have yet to do a mini-series on pharmacotherapy. But there's always hope. There's an array of hope. These conditions can be treated. They can be treated. It doesn't have to be a lifelong situation. So guys, take care of your dog and also take care of yourself. Truly. Take care of yourself. Take care of your neighbor. Take care of your friend. Watch out for them. During these times, when this darn pandemic seems unpredictable, uncontrollable, it's lasted for 11 months now, a lot of people are sliding into helplessness. Reach out for them. Give them a hand. All right, that's it for today. Tomorrow I'll try and talk about something a little bit lighter and a little bit faster on our feet. So stay tuned for tomorrow, and I'll be back with you guys then. Take care.